Okay, so my name's Thomas, and I've been wanting to do videos for a bit now, especially with me switching careers and starting to learn programming. So this is going to be an intro video so that I can test out recording, see how it looks, make sure. I don't even know if this is the screen that's recording at the moment, but I hope so. And your screen sharing, yeah, I think it's working. So I'll probably come back and do like a better intro video, whereas this one I kind of want to dive in and see how it looks with just working through problems and what I was going to do anyways without recording, because my main goals are, one, to see how I actually work through problems and be able to reevaluate it. Another thing is, if I want to come back to something that I remember doing. Right now it's like I have to try to backtrack, whether it's in my in this like diary that I keep on GitHub or just through memory. But with this I can just have a video that has like descriptions, and I can go back and be like, oh, this is the link that I used for this, and blah blah blah. Also, I kind of want to have updates for family to know what's going on, because I'm not just going to talk about code on here. I also want to give updates on what we're doing, because we're currently living in Los Angeles, and our idea right now is that we're going to have to relocate to Tempe, Arizona for work, but I'm waiting to talk with my project manager before we commit to that. But it's a pretty big move, and yeah, so there's a few reasons to do the recordings that I think will be beneficial. I think that going through the ways that I try to solve problems will be nice. Maybe I can find better ways to do it as well. And yeah, like for example, to go right into this, I wanted to see how I'd created 3 projects for this last training that I went through, which I can get into later, but I wanted to see how to do API testing with my projects, so I decided to come back to project 1, and I think it's really interesting how quickly you forget all the specifics for a project that you created. So this is my Eclipse, where I made my Java programs. Let me stop the application here. And this one's called Winter ERS because it's an expense reimbursement system where an employee can create a reimbursement request at work, whether they're doing like a travel reimbursement or anything that they would have spent that they expect to be paid back for on their payroll. So I'll run this one on the server here. Once it's up and running, it should, I think it'll open up a new browser once it's done here, or a new tab in my existing browser. There we go. So I wanted to check to see if I could do the API testing with this, and I was going to use the API testing within Postman. Let me try to bring this over. So within Postman, why isn't this going? It's not letting me minimize it here. Whatever. So we didn't go over this in my training, but you can write the manual tests or these tests in here in JavaScript that will, check that your endpoint returns like a status code of 200, or you can check the JSON value that's sent back. It's something that we didn't get into, so I kind of wanted to play around with it and get a little more comfortable with it, because when I was getting interviewed for my job that I just got hired for, they had mentioned API testing, so I figure it's better to learn before getting on the job than after. So let me pull this away. So I had that's where I started off the morning. I was like, okay, let me see if I should start with project 1 or project 2 for testing out this feature. So I decided to go with project 1 here, and this opens up, and inside of my DBeaver, I know there's a lot of stuff and I can get into details later, but this is all the little things that we needed to test out our project and make sure things were working as we went. This DBeaver is a database management system, so that we can store these tables that our application is connected to. So as you can see, these are the available users inside of the application. So we can do test and root 1, 2, 3. Test, root 1, 2, 3. And that logs in successfully. If we come back to Eclipse, we'll see that took the username, and it also showed us the account type for that user, which if you look over here, it's an employee. I also have a manager, because we have the employees that can create reimbursement requests, and then we have the managers who can approve or reject them. So yeah, I don't really want to go into like giving you a full tour of this application, because that's not the point of this video. It's more so to show you my thought process and to show myself my thought process as well. But yeah, so what I realized was, I was like, oh, so for this project, let me go to the controller that we have here. You can see all of our controllers for this application, and we had used servlets for connecting from our database to our HTML or our JSP pages. I think it's a Java servlet page is what JSP stands for. But so in this application, I forgot that we had actually done all of the front end, quote unquote, inside of Java as well. So it's pretty messy, because you can see all the JSPs and the HTML. I tried to do almost all of JSP, because I believe that's supposed to be, it has all the functionality of an HTML, but it and more, but I don't have that 100% at the moment. But yeah, so you can see most of these are JSP that for all the web pages that my application has. And so what we do is the controller actually handles the requests and the responses like manually. I know that might not be 100% correct terminology, but I'm going to just talk my way through this, and then whatever I can be corrected on them, that's the point of doing this. So yeah, we didn't do what I thought we were doing, which and when I say we, I built this myself, but this is the first the first real project. We had one before this that was a little more of a learning situation than even this was, but this one gave us a full understanding of kind of having a DAO design pattern for communicating with the database. So this is our login DAO IMPL. This is the unimplemented DAO, or the service file. So the point of this project really was that with this file, having it as an interface, we can use this file with any database. It doesn't have to be specific to PostgreSQL, MySQL, Oracle database, whatever. We have these functions, right? And they're spelled out for what is needed for each, what parameters we need for each. And then when you get to the implemented portion of this, the class that implements this service layer, then we have the code that's specific to PostgreSQL. And what we could do is, if we rename this login DAO IMPL Postgres, we could also have login DAO IMPL MySQL, and then we can have another one that's login DAO IMPL Oracle, and all of them can implement specifically for the database that's being connected to, and this would never change. So yeah, this IMPL has the database connection. We also have we have logging included inside of this application. And yeah, so I know I'm kind of going on tangents here and there, but basically what I realized, to sum it up, is that testing the endpoints on this one isn't as straightforward as I thought it would be. Like, basically when let me come out of this test area here. When if I was to, for example, put this URL in and do a GET request, it responds with the entire HTML document for this one, which this document here is this document here, which is our login page, which is, if we were to log out here, click on the login page, you can see the same URL up here. It's this page here. So let me go to Postman. I'm not 100% sure how to even do requests and work with the JSON endpoints with this project. So it kind of took a few minutes to realize, but I also like kind of diving back in on this because there's a lot of learning that did occur, and there's a lot more learning that is also available to me. Like, I feel like I can beef this up, and with coding, like, you're always kind of building either your personal projects or working on your work that's assigned to you, and I feel like I haven't really fully grasped, okay, when you just let something die, or if you just keep going back and kind of playing in that same sandbox sort of thing. So for now, I'm just going to keep going back to these projects and seeing what I can learn, because they offer different things. Like for this project, because it's entirely built in Java, testing it is a bit different than testing my one that has a UI in Angular. So with this application, I had let me open up the testing for it, because I'm being trained specifically for testing, which if somebody asks me what that is, there's a lot of answers for it. And it's going to be specific for what I get hired for, and I still have to talk to my project manager about that. But the main idea I have in my mind is that we're going to enforce or just be the ones pushing for the test-driven development, which is you have your test cases written before you have your production code or anything that's like development code written. You want to write your tests first, and then you write your code specific to those tests, make sure it passes those tests, and instead of doing it the other way around and trying to chase after wild horses or something. I don't know why I said that, but so inside of our testing, I used this application for setting up Makito tests, and I also went back after we learned Cucumber and Selenium automation. I had gone back to this one and added that functionality and those test cases in here. But once again, I'm going on a tangent, but basically I realized, okay, I can't do this API testing the way that I wanted to. So all in all, that means that I might as well just stop that application, and I would move over to the project 2, and I would try to do it inside of this one. And let's let this refresh for a second. I'm hoping that this process is somewhat interesting. If not, doesn't matter. I'm still gonna upload the video and try to learn something from it, and put it into 2x speed, and But anyways, so for Dr. Finder, this application uses Spring Boot, and I actually have to see if I can get all of this running real time. I didn't kind of practice any of this stuff before recording, but I'll get this server running in Java, so we see that there's no errors. We're currently printing out all the beans that are I don't know if auto-wired is the correct usage for that, but all the beans that are available within this application. So this is up and running. Let's see what server we're on for this one. So this uses 50/50, and because it has the front end, this shouldn't really show anything. Okay, yeah, error page. So let's get Angular up and running, and I don't even have it started yet. Let me make it smaller. Okay, so we have our Angular here. Keep getting lost behind all these pages. Alright, so it must have been, let me just close all these. Close all these. Alrighty, let me start this one up. npm start. See if my computer completely terminates or something here. Alright, so this is starting up. And for anyone that's wondering, like, I've been trying to learn programming for a while, probably since college. Back in I think 2010 was the first time I might have picked up a book, maybe in 2009. For some reason, every time I went to the library at school, I try to find a programming book. I have no idea why. And so I've always tried to learn. It was hard to figure out which language to focus on. Alright, this loaded successfully. So I'll open this one up. Yeah, this one loaded as well. But yeah, I tried to learn, and I think I went down the JavaScript, and I went down I think it's called CS50, the free Harvard course online. I tried to learn that. I got through the class at least once, then like 2 years would go by, then I tried again, and 2 years would go by. And I did that in the Web 50, so I got like experience with C and Python and algorithms, and then I would try to read some books. And then finally, when COVID hit, I worked all through COVID, but it was in production. I worked at a few TV networks from 2020 until this past December, and then I just was so burnt out that I wanted to try something where I could work from home, or work in a way that I could be home at reasonable hours, or have some energy left for my baby and my wife. And it was a risk, but so far it's playing out okay. So everything that you're seeing right now is from me training, getting hired for a job and training since the end of January. So if you're wondering how much time it takes to kind of pick up certain things, and I worked my butt off, like studying nonstop. Yeah, just putting in a lot. Like, I've never worked as hard as I am right now for something that is largely mental, and it felt like kind of like going back to school and doing it right, because I didn't do it right. I just wasted a lot of time when I was at school when I was younger. So you can X out this one. So we have our server up and running. This needs both Angular running the server and our backend in Java running the server. You can see that they are communicating. The dispatcher servlet is doing its thing. And so let me see if I have my database going. For this one, I had parsed out a database for the previous project. Doctor Finder here. Let's see if this one works. Okay, so test username and password. Test password. All right. So this is working, and we see down here successful login inside of our backend. I put a lot of time into this project, and it was really nice. I felt like the use of Spring felt really natural. It took a lot of like the stuff we had to do manually in the previous project. It kind of like took that off our hands and let us just focus on making the app work. I went back after the project was finished, and went through fixing, like the login wasn't working, but I went back and fixed that. The registration does work. You can register a patient or a doctor. So all of these front-end web pages, instead of them being smushed into the Java like they are in our previous project, so instead of having I'm showing you the previous project right now. Instead of having all of these pages like this, we don't have any of that in this project. source main Java. Yeah, we don't have those pages because in our front end Angular we have all of well, let me close this node modules thing. We have all of our components, models, services organized here, and our components within Angular allow us to, for example, for our logging component, we have our HTML in here. We have the TypeScript here, which transpiles over to JavaScript. And yeah, it's a little cleaner. I know it probably doesn't look clean on mine, but it's a little cleaner of a setup for having a full stack project. And I really like how instead of the controller inside of Eclipse, instead of the controller like we have in our previous project, see how our logging controller, let's see if this loads. It's an old computer. Alright, so you see how our controller is basically, it's really clunkily, I don't think that's a word, but it's really not in a smooth way, just pushing things through. It's basically like, okay, I'm connected to this servlet. Let me take the username that's entered and the password that's entered, and let me send it to our login.impl. Or no, that's not even, that's just creating an object. Let me make sure it's validated, the username and password exist, and if it's a valid user, then go to the welcome screen. And I also have it so if it's a valid manager, go to the welcome manager screen, else it's an invalid user and you should decline them. So let me close these ones. So that's the previous project. In this project, our controller, login controller. Once this loads. Okay, so our controller is able to use REST API capabilities. I believe that's correct. So this is what I was looking for when I went to try the API testing before, because this is what's been on my mind since we completed this one and we worked on the project after this. Excuse me. And basically what this allows us to do is if I pull up my Postman here, I go over to, I created a collection inside of here, and we can get into that later as well. Created a collection for get bills, but let me duplicate this one, and we can even do a get users. So get bills used to this. HTTP for get users. If we, for this project, if we go over to our login, so the username that we had signed in with was test and password. I guess this is checking the logins that are available. So going back to our backend here, we have our login, which is what we would put instead of bills. So login, and then we're auto wiring our login service, and then these are our get methods inside here. This is verifying a username and password. This one, so this is what you would have to add after that login that I just put into Postman if you're trying to use that API request. I think that's correct. For this one, it doesn't have one because this is just doing a GET request, right? And it's just getting the logins. This is what I wrote here. It returns the JSON data. So let's try a GET request that just uses this after our URL, and it's just doing this get logins method. So in Postman, we'll do, is it just login or is it logins? Login, okay. So we'll do get and we'll try. There we go. So we have login ID 10, username test, password. And this should match in our database, which, yep, login ID 10, password, test. So when I started all of this, the whole point was so that I could write tests for endpoints. And it's right now it's giving back a 200 OK. So we didn't learn about this in our training, as I said before, I think. But what I saw from, and I'll share the URL that I was using to find this, but if you click on these snippets, it's supposed to add in the pre-written code. So if you want to check to see if you're getting a 200 status code, all you click is status code is 200. And once again, I click the test button here, and then I would click this, and it adds this JavaScript in here, right? So now when I go to send this request, it's also running this test, and it passed it. So like if I was to do logins, it fails it because that's not the correct. I mean, what's the right word for that? Request mapping. It's not the right like URL. Yeah, mapping. I don't know. Anyways, so yeah, so this now has a test on it, and it was as simple as that. It's like inside of Postman, you have the correct URL here, go to tests, and you just add that. So you can add other stuff too. You can check JSON values, and this is where I was at when I started all of this, which is crazy because, you know, I've been up for the last 2 hours and kind of trying to get to this point, and that's what I think for me software development is. It's like long, sometimes you have really short ways to getting to a solution, and sometimes it's a bit longer, and for me right now, that's what this one was. So my tutorial that I was looking at, let me pull this one over. It's hard because I'm only recording the one screen, but I got two here. So this is the resource that I was looking at, and I'll post this URL. Basically, it goes through the same stuff that I just talked about, but for the custom one, it says how to change for comparing an expected result versus an actual result. So let's try this out, and then I'm gonna take a break and get some coffee. I'm not sure how frequent to do these. I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know what I'm gonna do, but if people enjoy it, and you know, I think you can honestly learn how to code from, you know, just even following along and not being afraid to go down like long rabbit holes of uncertainty. It's like, don't think that you're not smart enough to do this. It's not about intelligence. It's like you just have to work really hard, and you have to want it. And I think it's worth it. I think in this world, it's like you're gonna have to work hard either way, so you might as well be particular about how you're gonna work hard. And I think software developers get a little slack for how hard they have to work. You have some software developers that are just so lazy, I think, and will complain about anything. And that's not the norm, but I think if you want to get paid to do nothing, I think it's more possible in this field than it is any other field that exists. It's not my goal, but everyone's different. Anyways, so let's try this. Let's get this done so I can let my brain rest for a minute. From the snippet section, click on response value JSON value check. That's what we did. We're going to check we'll check our result based on what's in our database. So if we go to our DBeaver, we're going to check if username test has the password, or no, has the user ID 10. So we're going to check if test has the login ID 10. Okay. Replace your test name from the code with, so let me see a good way to do this. Replace, we're on step 4 here. No, it does something weird. Okay, there we go. And then where's my Postman? I have so many windows crammed into this. Yeah, I don't need that much space for Postman if it fixes itself properly. There we go. Alright. So replace your test name with check if user with ID 10 is test. I think that's how it, yeah, it's lowercase. So that's the test name. Replace JSON data dot value with JSON data 0 dot username. I think that should be right. Yeah, username. So this should be the first one, the first data that's returned. So that's why we were using 0. If we were trying to get this one, we would put a 1 here instead of a 0. So this should be the first username equal to test. And then all we're going to do is click send here. Oop. They don't have good window, whatever that's called, dynamic resizing. Okay, so let's see if we have 2 tests passed now. Now we have 2 tests passing. See? Check if user with ID 10 is test. I think we can do the same thing with the next value. ID, what was the next value? 1. With ID 1 is test 4. ID 1 is test 4. And then we have to change this to the second data point, which is, because it's 0 index, 0, 1, and then test 4. Send. Okay. So now we have 3 tests going. So if you're in an interview and somebody asks you about API testing, this is it. You're checking the JSON body that's being returned from sending this this GET request. You can obviously do this in a lot of ways. There's different snippets over here that you're able to go through, and I want to kind of play around in a lot of them and see what I can find. I want to get really comfortable because I think that's what my job's going to be mainly. Once again, I still have to talk with my project manager to find out specifically. But yeah, this is API testing in a nutshell. More so than that, it's the way that I kind of get to finding a solution or figuring something out. And sometimes I get sidetracked on the way and blah, blah, blah. But I hope this stuff is somewhat interesting and helpful. I'll post what I used inside of this video. I'll post like what Postman, Eclipse, Angular, DBeaver. I'll post that URL for the test in here from Guru99. Credit to them for this helpful guide. And I'll be back. I don't know if the next video will be me doing more tests and kind of venturing into the unknown of trying stuff that's not specifically inside of this guide. But I hope I can help you to feel more comfortable with learning how to code and make it fun along the way. So, yep. See you, everyone.